In this fourth session of the week 7, we will discuss about Korean sushi bars outside of America, especially Europe and Oceania. As we learned, the Korean immigrants opening Japanese sushi bars was not confined only to North America. As a matter of fact, it was a global phenomenon, both in Western Europe and Oceania in the late 1990s and early 2000s. And now, interestingly, then, were these Koreans, before they migrated to America or Europe or Oceania, from South Korea, did they have a convention and did they discuss what they will do? No. Interestingly, this happened separately and independently in North America and Europe and Oceania, but the results are surprisingly similar. So that's what we will cover, Europe and Oceania. In fact, sushi bars were run not only by Koreans, but also other ethnic groups. Koreans are the dominant people, but there were also other ethnic groups making sushi in North America, Western Europe, and Oceania. And now they include Chinese. Chinese are latecomers, but Chinese are also in sushi business, some Chinese, and Dutch. The Dutchies were the first Europeans who knew about sushi. Why? Because of the Dutch trade in Nagasaki during the Edo, the Tokugawa Japan. So Dutch people today, they have that tradition of studying Japanology, the knowledge about Japan. They learned the judo, the martial art. They also brought Japanese paintings. They were the people who introduced the Western medicine and technologies and so on to Japanese during Tokugawa era. And today, like for example, the Japanese cultural influence on Western civilization is much greater than ordinary people think. Like for example, in Western history of art, the Impressionism, that came from Japan. Like if we look at the great paintings by Van Gogh, for example, many of his paintings reflect Japanese ukiyo-e painting, especially those of the famous Japanese ukiyo-e painter Hokusai. But anyway, this is not the main topic that we will deal with today, so we will try to concentrate only on sushi, and also Mexicans and Turkish. Just name a few. But generally, Koreans are the largest, the leading group in sushi business. And Korean immigrants in Europe also have similar reasons to enter this business. The relative lack of popularity of Korean food in the host society that pushed them to look for new opportunity. And because they also have the tradition of making kimbap, and the number of Koreans in Europe is much, much smaller than in North America. So even if you open a Korean restaurant, you won't have that many customers. And in continental Europe, today, Germany has the largest number of Korean migrants. It used to be Great Britain, but after the Brexit, now Germany rose as the center of Korean diaspora in Europe. And from there, in Germany, some Koreans moved within European Union and they opened sushi bars in other countries, including Latvia and Lithuania and so on, and Czech Republic and Slovakia and so on. And so Koreans, not just in North America, but also in Europe, they started to engage in sushi business and they spread it out to interior of European continent. Now in Oceania as well, Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji, the Korean immigrants, many Korean immigrants are engaging in sushi bar business. And these Korean sushi makers, they are scattered around the whole world, including in Singapore and Malaysia, and so on and so on. But anyway, they developed their business independently and separately from other Koreans. And for this reason, the Korean-made sushi seems to show some variances between them. Like for example, I met a Korean man who started sushi business first in New Zealand. Nearly, he was the first Korean person who opened sushi bar. And he said he had never been to Japan before that year I met him. And he said after his business was well set up, first time he visited Tokyo. And the purpose of that visit was to learn about sushi. And he said he was just shocked at the huge differences between the sushi he was making and selling in New Zealand and the Japanese sushi in Tokyo. So these Koreans are totally ignorant about the sushi in today's Japan. And so what they did was they were creating a new sushi rolls in North America and Europe and Oceania. And interestingly, particularly here in New Zealand and Australia, where fish and chips is the national dish, by the way, and there are many New Zealanders who believe, as a joke, who believe that if anything is not deep fried, it's not edible. So they have this kind of culture. So I began to see sushi rolls deep fried. The whole sushi roll is made and then deep fried. And they are sold as a sushi. So I mentioned that there were as so many Koreans were engaged in this sushi bar business overseas, actually there were some training institutions. And now I already showed you this Tokyo Sushi Academy in Los Angeles, Koreatown on your left. But also there are other courses in South Korea itself, and one of them is Dongwon Sushi Academy. I tried to find this company recently and it seems to have disappeared by now. But anyway, when I checked their webpage first time a few years ago, it showed how many of their students were operating all over the world. So in North America, nearly a few thousand, and so on and so on. So this kind of training facilities with a very short-term intense training, so many Koreans were sent overseas to operate sushi bars. And now I want to take you to a very small town in New Zealand, in central New Zealand. Now this town is so small and I believe there are less than 2,000 people living there. And I encountered this particular sushi bar, and the name is Arigato Mom's Sushi. So if you just look at the name of the restaurant, you know that this is not Japanese. And now in this particular restaurant, you see what kind of sushi is exhibited there. From their Facebook, you see that all this at the top layer, the sushi is something with deep fried food. So deep fried fish seems to be very popular in countryside New Zealand and Australia because people's culinary culture where deep fried food is a essential part of their culinary life. And it is so cheap. This menu was taken several years ago, and like one sushi roll is barely $2-3. Many of them are just $1. Now that's not US dollar, that's New Zealand dollar. So maybe in US term, like one sushi roll is what, 70 cents or 80 cents. So cheap. And of course, they sell well. So in our next session, we will look at the business perspective of running Japanese sushi bars and Korean Hanshik restaurant, because that explains why so many Koreans opt to run Japanese sushi bars in North America and elsewhere.